Hey guys, I'm back. Instead of pressing pause, I went ahead and stopped the video. So this is going to be a two-part video series here. I hope you can deal with it. I'm learning this whole filming thing. I'm gonna just do my best as I go, learn. So we're gonna get started assembling the cylinder head, and I'm gonna use the stock cylinder, which is typically just fine. It's all going to really depend on the piston head that you use. If you have a plastic piston head, a brass or aluminum cylinder is fine. If you have a aluminum piston head, then it's better to have a stainless steel cylinder. That way, as the piston rubs against the cylinder, it's not going to mark up the cylinder wall, causing damage. Fortunately, I don't have any stainless steel cylinder heads to use at this point, and at the lower velocity, the brass cylinder head or the cylinder should be just fine. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just simply using a bit of rubbing alcohol and I'm cleaning the inside of the cylinder, just getting all the old gunk out of it, and I'm prepping it to assemble. So I use actually urethane to seal this whole assembly, which is pretty cool because it's quite a bit more than just a single O-ring or even a double O-ring. Holds everything in place, and I like that a lot. So I've got this urethane and a glove because this stuff is really hard to get off. I just apply a little blob of it to my finger. And then I'm going to just apply it around the cylinder head here, my Ajax Customs cylinder head. And these are they should be available on my website, ajaxcustoms.com. If you don't see them on there, then just give us a call, and I'll post up our contact information. We build these custom, and I usually recommend that I install them because if you just throw them in there, they may not hold up as well. The urethane also just secures the whole assembly, and it reduces the likelihood of this separating from the aluminum cylinder head. So there's that. And then I have, just the sealing O-ring, and I'm going to just coat this with urethane on all sides and then put it in the little groove here. So that's a nice little set. I'll go ahead and just get more rubbing alcohol, and I use the 100% rubbing alcohol. It's a good cleaner. I'm just going to clean the surface of this cylinder head so it doesn't glue the piston head to the cylinder. From there, to just seat into place. Pretty tight fit, but that's a good thing. There we go. So that's in place. Okay. Clean the outside of the assembly. Don't need the glove anymore. I always try to not get these in my, on my fingers, or get the urethane on my fingers and fingernails, but it kind of comes with the job, I guess. There we go. And this O-ring is tough. It's just wanting to pop out. There we go. Let's try that one more time. Right. Okay, good. Now it's set. So what I'm going to do now is just make sure the cylinder head fits and the gearbox halves come together. Sometimes the cylinder head needs to be drilled out a little bit. Like the holes don't always match up. That's just something you want to check for. Okay. So actually I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to drill out these holes here just slightly to allow a better fit into the gearbox. Just be using a 3/16 drill bit. Open it up just a hair, it doesn't need much. That should be enough to hold everything, to allow everything to close up. I'll give it a try again. And while we're working on this, you'll get a good look at the G&G ETU, the trigger assembly. This actually takes out 2 points of sound. You don't have the spring, so it actually makes the whole assembly quiet, more quiet and, way more efficient. So these are pretty awesome little upgrades that G&G's taken the initiative to install. Spring is popped out. Okay, let's try that again. Looks like the gearbox half is closing just fine now. We can go ahead and proceed with the upgrade. Maybe. All right. Good thing urethane is kind of slow to dry, so you got plenty of time to work on it. So next thing we're going to do is change out the piston head. As we saw, piston head has some cracks in it, and over time that's just going to end up fracturing. Plus the piston head that I use, I think really does a lot to help with your groupings and consistency. So this is a vented piston head. Just my opinion that the vents allow for more variables, more less consistent airflow. So I opt for my Ajax Customs piston head that has no vents on it. It's just a solid piston head, like your old Tokyo Marui piston head. And this one here has been hollowed out. It's made out of aluminum, but it's been hollowed out, so it's really super lightweight. And I'm using a really nice supple O-ring. So on this, the stock bearing that's in the guide, or that's in the piston, is just fine. I haven't really noticed any performance difference by adding, metal bearings, other than, it seems to add a little bit of weight. On this, it's critical to apply some red Loctite on the screw here, because it will be taking a lot of force. So I'm just going to go ahead and torque everything down. And there's that. The lubricant that I use for the O-ring is the Slip 2000 Airsoft Gel. It's like a thicker, just a thicker gel than your silicone lubricant. But it's thinner than your gearbox grease. And I just apply a generous amount just around the O-ring, and then this guy just slips right in here. Oh yeah, we skipped a step. We need to actually put in the tappet plate and the air nozzle. This air nozzle is not a seal nozzle, and there are upgrade nozzles on the market. In my opinion, it doesn't make much of a difference, and you actually want to watch out for a lot of the air nozzles. If the O-ring is too thick, it'll actually cause drag on your cylinder right here. And that, you know, if you lubricate it, it's usually fine, but that lubricant, if it dries out, that drag is going to persist, and that's going to actually drop your FPS a lot. A lot of airsofters or techs that have worked on their own guns have, you know, dealt with mystery air loss, and they can't figure out why. A lot of it comes from that air nozzle, so it's better that it moves freely. It's better to have that than, you know, perfect seal. So I don't think it makes too much of a difference at all, just in my, you know, opinion and experience. So right now, I'm just setting in the tappet plate. You got to be pretty critical about how you position it. The cam on the sector gear is pointing down. The teeth are away from the piston, just so everything comes together. All right. Okay, we're going to drop in the anti-reversal latch. Can't forget that part. And again, as you can see how everything kind of just sits together. That's not me. That's just the build quality of G&G, you know, internals. They're just pretty nice. I really enjoy that. Here's your stock spring guide. These are pretty cool. Sometimes these bolts come loose, but for 350 FPS, it's not going to be too critical. If you're doing a high velocity upgrade, I would suggest using like a solid spring guide. This is the damping grease that you saw in the video on the upper receiver. So I'm just going to apply a little bit on these coils here. And if you've ever wondered why airsoft springs have irregular pitch, there's a reason. And I learned this by, you know, trying to make my own springs and having them, you know, kind of fail and break. These dead coils are actually designed to dampen the spring itself. So if it didn't have coils, when it expands, it will vibrate. That vibration will actually cause the spring to fracture and break. So these dead coils, the irregular pitch is designed to reduce that. You know, it makes the spring less efficient, but it increases the overall life of the spring. So I'm applying just a little bit of damping grease, and that may, you know, drop the FPS a hair. But in my opinion, you know, it just makes the gun sound a lot better, and it just pretty much eliminates a lot of that vibration. So I also added some to the tappet plate spring, just for shits and giggles. And we're just going to drop everything in. This is a tricky part, you know. Sometimes when you're trying to put your gearbox together, everything kind of falls apart or bounces out. So, you know, time and experience will kind of help that. Hopefully this video will help you guys get better at it as well. So we just need to make sure everything lines up properly. So I'm also going to do a function check before I put the screws in. I need to make sure that the tappet plate is in place and the air nozzle didn't, you know, pop out for some reason or another. Then I'm going to make sure that there's range of motion in the piston itself. The piston can often come off track, and if that's off track, it'll look fine, but when you go to put the gun together and fire it, it just makes a grinding noise. So the piston's moving back and forth. That means everything internally is set correctly. So now all we have to do is put the guy back together. So I just drop in the screws. And some people will put Loctite on these screws, like blue Loctite. And blue is the Loctite that is not permanent, where red is the permanent style. I don't think it really matters too much. And my torque setting is 4. Some people like to go hotter, or harder. I don't really care for it because I've seen tons of screws get stripped. So you can kind of do a crisscross pattern when tightening the screws if you want, just like you would on a, you know, an engine or something like that. But I don't think it's super critical. I'm also going to just do a quick little modification here and just stretch out your cutoff lever spring. That's just going to allow it to, you know, just have maximum response. and then I'll apply just a little bit of the stamping grease on that as well. So now we're done with the internal upgrade. We're going to go ahead and assemble the rifle, and I'll go ahead and show you how to do that real quick. So you got your receiver, and of course it drops in. So there's a specific order that I use when I reassemble the guns, and that's just to ensure that the nozzle aligns properly with your hop-up. Oh, I skipped a step actually. We need to put this back together. So you need to make sure that your nozzle and your hop-up align properly, otherwise you will have some weird phantom problems in function and performance. So I don't think this has any specific order in how it goes together. Okay, so there's two little dots here on this cog, and then two dots on either side, so that just is helping with alignment, so I'm aligning those guys. And on this side, I think we're going for this should be the full auto function or something like that. Actually, so I'm aligning everything so it's safety, and then I'm going to just double check that with the direction of the selector lever, and this little flat area indicates that it should be set on safe when it's all together. We'll double check the other side to make sure those cogs line up and everything looks like it's good. Now I can proceed to put it back together. Feed the wires through the back. Oh shit. It's a tight fit on this gearbox, but I managed, and it looks like, actually it looks like I screwed up, so I have to pop it apart, or the cog on the back side here I put on backwards. But it's okay, you know, as long as you're not forcing the parts and you're just taking your time, you know, this is normal. I mean, I've been working on gearboxes for years and years and years, and I still, you know, I still make mistakes and overlook things. So don't sweat it, you know, as long as you're having a good time. All right, so that's a full auto setting. We're going to go ahead and rotate to here, and that's going to be your safe setting. This is actually easier than a lot of the, you know, a lot of your ambidextrous selector assemblies. Some of them are just ridiculous. Like the VFC ones are really crappy. That's why I don't really like Scars, the VFC Scars. They're great guns for the most part, but those selectors are just hoopty. Also, like the classic Army Scars, you have to use like screwdrivers and stuff like that to get everything set in properly. Okay, so let's check this again. I'm going to drop in the main body pin to hold everything together. And it's important to remember how your pin was. Like KWAs and G&Gs are opposite on how the pin sits in. So there's a flared area or a textured area. Usually the G&G sits in on, you know, on the main selector side, this side here, and like KWAs are different. You want to just observe that, otherwise you're going to end up marring the receiver if you're popping the pin in, you know, random directions. Go ahead and drop in the body pin here, just to stabilize it, and then we'll go ahead and add this selector levers back into place. It looks like between the two, you have a bigger one and a smaller one. I would estimate which one goes where, I'm not sure. I'd say the bigger one probably sits on the main side here. That's something I should have probably have marked, but it's fine. Testing the function. Okay. As long as the safety's locking up on safety, that means everything is set in place properly. Put the smaller guy here. All right, so I'm going to go into my lobby and just make sure that this shorter and longer selector are in the proper places. If not, I'll have to swap it around. Give me 1 second. All right, back. Yep, I did it right. Hooray for Ajax. Woo. So I'm going to just go ahead and torque these down. And it's pretty critical too on your rifle. If your selectors get loose, it's best to tighten those guys up as soon as you can. It sucks when you lose those stupid little components. Now I'm just going to put in the mag catch. And then soon I'll just assemble and just get everything together. So that's there. Now I'm going to assemble the halves of the receiver, the upper and lower. And I'm going to do that before I do the motor. Actually, this part you usually want to do last or near the end of the installation. The reason being is often there's a little bit of play between the gearbox and the receiver. If you're tightening down your pistol grip, it can actually make your gearbox kind of arc up a little bit and just throw everything out of alignment. So you usually want to do all your body pins first, then I do the halves, then I'll put on the buttstock, then I'll do the pistol grip and then test fire it. So here is the half from the other video. But set these in place. The owner of the gun lost the mag release, or not the mag release, the bolt release, but that's just an aesthetic part. Getting everything together. And as you recall in the last video, the Teflon tape was on the hop-up, so now that's kind of pushing that in. If I take the hop-up out in the future, I'll want to replace that Teflon tape, just to ensure that it gets a really, really tight fit. So that's all together. And the hop-up, if you can see it, is in there nice and solid. It ain't moving anywhere. This is where I torque down your set screw that we placed in the last video. And you want that to be fairly snug. If you're using a brass barrel or an aluminum barrel, it may actually crush the inner barrel. That's why I'm using a stainless steel barrel to prevent that from happening. So now that's set into place. And looking pretty good. There's your Ajax Customs inner barrel. So now I'll just get the stock redone or reassembled. You're going to throw in your sling. Now, this is a little bit of a pain in the ass to get installed. The best way to do it is to put the MOSFET wires through first. Then you'll want to feed your connection wire to the MOSFET through. Then you want to connect everything together. Here. And then there's your long screwdriver. Of course, tighten everything up. right, then I'm gonna just reconnect this wire here. And you could, I don't know if you can see this on the video, there's a little slot that indicates which direction it goes on this, this little cable. It just plugs in like so. I'm just gonna leave it. I'll cable tie this in just a moment just to snug everything up. Now we'll do the pistol grip. And then we can actually test fire it, adjust the motor. And the rest of it is just, you know, putting the external accessories back together. You guys don't really, I don't think I have to film that. I'm sure you guys can get it. Using the cool Ryobi little screwdriver. It's back in place. Now we just need to drop the motor in. So you want to remember all of your wiring goes towards the back and up and around for the most part. It's just, you know, when you take your gun apart, just watch or observe how your wires are set and do it the same way. So I drop these in. I'm going to use these needle nose pliers just to kind of crimp these ever so slightly to allow them to have a little bit more pressure to increase the likelihood they'll stay. Other things you can do is use like, I've used conductive glue in the past, and that really holds everything together pretty well. It always sucks when your stupid little motor wires pop off in the middle of a game, you know. So since I reshimmed the bevel gear, it's critical that I adjust the motor height. And on these screws here, you always want to be critical not to over torque these. This is what, if this one in here gets stripped, it's a pain in the ass to get that out. So it's always good to have as part of your toolkit some easy outs. This one I got on like Amazon or something like that. It's got a full set, works great. And now we can just test fire it. Before I do that, I'm just gonna make sure that this main adjustment screw can actually move. Sometimes they get, you know, they're glued in place or whatever the case. You never really want to Loctite this area unless it's super loose, then use like blue Loctite. So I'm gonna grab a battery, got one right here. We'll just test fire it. You always want to point your muzzle in a safe direction, not at your cat, because you know you never know if it's loaded. You always want to assume your airsoft gun's loaded. So you see, it sounds actually pretty good, and you don't hear much of a twang. And now I'm just going to adjust this motor. The way to do it is, I usually do like a, I don't know, maybe an eighth of a turn, fire it, eighth of a turn, fire it. Just keep on turning it until you notice it starts sounding worse, then back it out. And that's pretty much it. This particular grip, in my opinion, isn't as good as like the stock grip, so it's going to sound just a hair gamey, as you could tell. But overall, it's much better than it was. It sounds pretty fantastic, actually. And it's going to, you know, hold up over the test of time. So that is pretty much how I do upgrades. This was a pretty basic upgrade. In the future, when I get an order in for a, you know, full Ajax Customs upgrade, I'll do a video of that. If you like the video, please, you know, thumbs up it, share it, post any comments, concerns, or if you have any feedback. I'd love to hear any of that, because this is actually quite fun for me. It's only taken me a few more minutes out of my time to actually do the upgrade, but get to educate you all, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, thumbs up. There's Rad's thumb. Peace out.